Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We expect a decision from the Supreme Court on the Colorado ballot challenge case just in the next few minutes by top of the hour.
I know, I'm glued to the... We're waiting and watching, so...
That's going to be interesting. I mean, they're going to invalidate what the Colorado Supreme Court did, and they're going to allow for Trump to be on the ballot. But the particulars of the decision...
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, it could be interesting to see how it always is, how narrowly they tailor it or how broadly they issue a rebuke of Colorado and Maine and
Illinois, essentially.
Cook County. Yeah.
But do you think it'll be 9-0, or what are you predicting?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be surprised if there's a holdout. It's especially because I think it's pretty clear from the oral arguments, even though the normal caution about reading too much into oral arguments, but just the implication of what the Colorado Supreme Court did and the constitutional crisis it would engender if they did not rebuke the Colorado Supreme Court. I suspect that everybody's going to want to be on that side of the divide, particularly if it's narrowly tailored to address just these. For example, you cannot suggest a state Supreme Court cannot rule somebody is guilty of an insurrection and disqualified under the 14th Amendment from holding a federal office when he hasn't even been charged with that crime. I mean, if it's just narrowly tailored like that, I think it's going to be difficult for anybody to hold out. But we'll see. We'll see. Trump rallying the faithful over the weekend in Richmond, Virginia, and in North Carolina. And obviously border security was a big issue. And here's the claim that he made in Richmond, Virginia, as to why we have the chaos at the border that we have under this president.
Everything else, it's so crazy. Who would want this? Think of it. Who would want this? Open borders where people are allowed to come in from mental institutions and jails. Who would want this? Who would? Is there something good? I guess the only thing I can say is they're trying to sign them up to get them to vote in the next election. That's all it is. But they don't really need that, because what they do is they just use blank ballots. You know, they just drop ballots. So they don't really have to destroy our country for that, although when you use blank ballots, I would say that's also destroying our country, wouldn't you say? Every day, Joe Biden is giving aid and comfort to the foreign enemies of the United States. Biden's conduct on our border is, by any definition, a conspiracy to overthrow the United States of America. That's what's happening.
Well, and setting aside the blank ballot claim, it is difficult to posit another rationale other than sort of ultimately reshaping the electoral composition of the country, because we, of course, have a lot of experience in understanding that when you have this sort of influx of people from around the world, it seems very hard for the federal government, regardless of the balance of power in D.C., to get about the business of removing people who entered illegally, doesn't it? There's always deals to be cut that never quite get cut, and reckonings to come that never quite come, and things just sort of vary in the pace of the flow, but it really, over the last 40 years, hasn't stopped the flow, even though this is what Trump is promising again if he is elected in November. For more on the electoral politics of all this, what we can expect tomorrow, and the implications of an expected Trump blowout in the Super Tuesday primaries, David Drucker joins us, senior writer for The Dispatch, author of In Trump's Shadow, The Battle for 2024 and the Future of the GOP. David, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be here, guys.
Any particular surprises you anticipate tomorrow, or are we coming to the end of the official primary season for the Republican Party? Well, for both, really.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, look, I don't think there are any surprises really. I mean, Nikki Haley may win a state or two. I suppose that would be a surprise. But I mean, Trump's on a roll. He's gonna lock up the nomination from a delegate perspective, which makes it ironclad official by the end of March, as far as I can tell. And we're going to see the beginnings, I think, this month of a real general election battle in terms of Trump's focus and Biden's focus, and we'll see where that takes us. But I think the Republican primary, in terms of having two candidates to pay attention to, I think that's about to come to an end.
Well, what about, Nikki Haley won Washington, D.C., picked up 19 delegates last night.
Exciting.
It's not very, well, if anything, it'll give you, how many, 696 votes for Trump? That was it?
Look, Nikki Haley may pick up some more delegates on Super Tuesday tomorrow. The thing is, and look, that in some universe where Trump cannot be crowned the nominee on the floor of the Republican convention in Milwaukee this summer, then the fact that she has delegates and nobody else does becomes somewhat interesting. It doesn't mean she automatically gets the nomination instead, but it becomes interesting. But she's just not anywhere near where he is in the delegate fight. And again, this isn't really about delegate fights. He's won every state. He's going to, again, maybe she wins a state or two tomorrow, but he's going to win the vast majority. Just look at his lead in the national polling, and that's where a quasi-national primary, which Super Tuesday is, where those national polls become very relevant. But we just refer to the delegates because, in theory, because she has the resources and because there's interest, she's free to continue to compete. Once Trump wins 1,215 delegates through these caucuses and primaries,
right,
again, she can still stand, but there's just really nothing else there to do.
But what state do you think she possibly could win?
Oh, she's not.
Well, I'm just curious.
She's not winning any states. I mean, this is laughable that this is an interesting contest. I mean, it just is. And I'm not really. I have no particular animus towards Nikki Haley, but I mean, this is about as interesting as Dean Phillips and Joe Biden. I mean, it's slightly more interesting,
hey, guys,
but just barely.
You asked me about it.
I'm not blaming you. I'm just voicing my view. You're right. I mean, I'm just saying. It's just. I mean, come on. Come on with this. This is done. It's been done for a while. We're just sort of going through the motions, and there are some people that want to sort of prop Nikki Haley up to like she's going to be sort of somehow influential at the convention or even in the Republican Party, and not this year. She's not. Maybe some things will transpire that to change her political fortunes, but she's going to be about as interesting in the Republican circles this cycle as Chris Christie, which is to say, not very.
Yeah, look, no argument here. The one thing I would point out is that even though it's been very obvious since Iowa that she's not going to win that she's not going to win the nomination, and that she's not going to come close to winning the nomination, the money has continued to flow in, and her crowds have been healthy. And I do think there's a segment of the party that's not necessarily insignificant that has wanted her to continue because they want a more traditional pre-Trump era Republican. And in a volatile election where we could have multiple third-party candidates and things are, very unusual, these voters are, people that I think Trump would be wise to attend to as he builds his coalition. But
100%.
But from
yeah.
a
100%.
win-loss perspective, of course. So I would look at her as an avatar for anywhere from 20 to 40% of the voters in any particular state, and just keep an eye on them because when you have a tight race, and even though Trump's ahead in all of the polls versus Joe Biden, it's still a tight race. A few votes here and there can matter quite a bit, and so that's where I think this is something to pay attention to, but not in terms of win-loss.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Although it was interesting in the New York Times Siena poll that you had basically when it came down to a binary, and this is registered voters, which I don't like, like likely voters, but regardless, it's still somewhat instructive directionally. Something like Trump has like 97% of support from Republicans, and Biden has something like 83% from his party, with 10% of those who voted for Biden last time around now voting for Trump. So, and that in part explains his lead, and his lead only grows when you include the third party candidates. So, but I mean, this is, far from saying this is a fait accompli. I'm not saying that at all. So I completely agree that those are sort of low hanging fruit voters. A lot of those Nikki Haley voters that Trump should absolutely tend to, as you said. But I wanted to get your reaction to per that polling that came out this weekend. So what does Biden do on Thursday at the State of the Union address amid all the calls, including from, like over the weekend, the likes of David Brooks saying Biden, if he's smart, he would essentially put a halt on asylum applications right now until we can, I think the words he used, sort of digest all the people who have entered at present. I mean, when it's coming from somebody like David Brooks, you wonder if there's if that represents some sort of internal push for Biden to bite the bullet with the sort of the hard left base of the party and issue some executive orders to redo what he undid when he took office.
Yeah, it's a really interesting issue for the president politically. I mean, look, I think that there's no doubt that the chaos at the southern border is hurting him politically. The challenge he has is that there is a not insignificant portion of the Democratic base that recoils from any policy that sounds like it's a Trump-supported policy. Mm-hmm. And that also looks at immigration and asylum, the asylum part of immigration, and illegal immigration just differently than independent voters and Republican voters, and even moderate Democrats. And so it's not as simple on the one hand of the president snapping his fingers and saying, never mind, this has been a disaster. I'm going to do basically what my predecessor did, and that will fix everything, because his Democratic coalition is already, fractious, right? They've got issues with him on Israel. They've got other issues with him, and so there's that aspect of it. On the other hand, at this point, it's not necessarily the worst idea for him to say, this isn't working. I'm going to do what I can with executive action while continuing to push Republicans to pass legislation and try and couch it that way as a way to sell it to his party, and see if the votes that he hopes to get back by doing that are more than the votes that he might lose from his base because of that, because what he's doing from a political standpoint clearly isn't working.
Yeah, I mean, RFK Jr. really complicates this for him, doesn't it? Because, I mean, he's not I think in the Times poll he had maybe a 9%, but he's has real sort of populist tendencies like Trump does as well, and he's basically taken the Trump position on the border. And so if you're a Democrat and you're unhappy with Biden, but you can't stomach Trump, then RFK Jr. provides a safe place to land, and that's a vote right out of Biden's tail. And that's just why I think in part you see Trump's lead expand when you include the third party candidates.
Yeah, no, there's definitely an argument for that. I mean, look, I've talked to a lot of Democrats, including Democrats, more sympathetic to more immigration and making it easier for people to come into the country legally. And, a lot of them believe that the president should do more with his executive powers than he is doing, and that would and they hope that would relieve some pressure on him. The thing about Joe Biden is he will make changes from time to time, but it takes him a heck of a long time to do it. And so I think the question is, first, again, this is from a Democratic Party perspective. He was supportive of a border security bill that didn't have any legalization component, which from a Democratic Party perspective was a really big deal. The bill didn't get anywhere, and so now the question is, they've been talking about him using his executive action to try and improve things at the border. But we're still talking about it. Will he get around to doing it or not? That's the real question. But I don't doubt that the people that the president has advising him on his campaign, they are very smart political operators. His chief pollster is a guy based in Birmingham, Alabama. He understands Republicans and non-Democratic Party voters very well. I'm sure they're telling him that this is a problem. So the question is he going to do what he's able to do on his own to try and alleviate it?
David Drucker, senior writer for The Dispatch, author of In Trump's Shadow, The Battle for 2024 and the Future of the GOP. David, thank you as always.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is the time of year to enjoy life, so stop letting pain in your joints keep you from doing what you want to do this spring. Call QC Kinetics now. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative medicine. I'm talking lasting joint pain relief, folks. No surgery, no drugs, and no downtime. QC Kinetics is literally transforming lives. Their advanced treatments harness your own body's ability to restore and repair damaged joint tissue. No pain pills, no risky surgery. This is an all-natural solution. QC Kinetics has tens of thousands of satisfied patients who've reclaimed their mobility. Take action now. Live your best life this spring and summer. It's a great use of your tax refund, by the way. So call QC Kinetics for a free consultation